Hello everyone and welcome back to Age of Nagash, which of course is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. And in this video we're going to be continuing my long in-depth Soulblight Gravelords Army Series. So if you're a little bit new to Age of Sigmar, this essentially is going to be the vampires, the skeletons, the zombies, the geists, and all other sort of monstrous creatures of the night within the game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. And if you are still at the beginning thinking if you should start collecting the Soulblight Gravelords, and you are still on the fence to know if it is an army for yourself that you would like to play, I have done a why play video for the Soulblight Gravelords that you can indeed check out on my Soulblight Gravelord playlist, so you can check that out before you get into this long in-depth army series. And if this is the first episode you're watching on my Soulblight Gravelords series, I have actually done a lore video for them, and check out part 1 of their army series, which is the last video, because that's all about the allegiance abilities, because when I'm reviewing this army, I will be reviewing it from the front of the book to the back, so you can follow it with me. And in part 2 today, we are going to be talking about the sub-allegiances for the Soulblight Gravelords, which are specifically called the Cursed Bloodlines, but more sort of commonly known as just the dynasties and legions you get within the Soulblight Gravelords. And as part of this complete review of those sub-allegiances, we'll be looking at the battle traits, the command traits, and the artifacts of power. I'll be telling you my honest thoughts, what I think is good, what isn't good. Obviously talking sort of more from, instead of a complete straight competitive mindset, be sort of thinking about mixing in the lore and stuff as well on this channel, as I often do. And then I'll be giving you my thoughts on each of those sub-allegiances to try and help you guys know what direction you want to take your Soulblight Gravelords, in trying to help you know what sort of playstyle you would like to get out of them. And with no further ado, let us crack on with it, and we'll be starting with the Legion of Blood. So basically, the best one, because it's the one the Neferata is in, and that is definitely my favourite Age of Sigmar character, so there will be no biased opinion here. And starting with the battle traits, we have a Grim Majesty. So the first one is Immortal Majesty. When Neferata's armies march out to accomplish her designs, they do so in such macabre splendour that the living cannot help but quail before them. And in the game, what this means is if an enemy unit fails a battleshock test within 3 inches of any friendly Legion of Blood vampire unit, so that's keyworded, add D3 to the number of models that flee. Okay, so this is where I'm sort of starting to talk about a bravery bomb you can do in the Soulblight Gravelords army, because if you remember, when we looked at the allegiance abilities for the Soulblight Gravelords in part 1, like I mentioned, you did have things like the Reanimate Horrors, which was an ability that allowed you to basically make the enemy -1 to your bravery if they're in range in some of your Soulblight Gravelord Deadwalkers or Soulblight Gravelord Death Rattle units, or subtract 2 if they're in range of 2 of those units. So you plus that with this Legion of Blood ability you get here. Bear in mind it has to be a vampire though, so the Death Rattle, the Dead Walker units cannot trigger it unless there's some overlapping keywords there that I've missed out on. So you can see how this can stack. And when this first came out, because this came out in 2nd edition, right at the end of 2nd edition, it was alright, but it wasn't that good because everyone was chucking Inspire's presence out everywhere, no one was running away. Now people are running away quite a lot, more often than not really, because you can only do Inspiring Presence once unless you've got other command abilities, etc. that are out there to stop people running away. Things are going to run away, and especially, let's use a prime amazing example, shall we? If you're going against Ogre tribes and the Beastclaw Raiders, and they have Mournfang packs, and they're going to run away because they can't do Inspiring Presence on them because they're using Inspiring Presence on another unit for some reason, or there's no one in range to do it, or blah 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 blah, no command point. And they do run away, D3 extra models. And that is the best example you're going to get, or one of the best ones. So that's definitely at the top of the kind of scale how useful this can be. But making D3 extra models run away, especially how I think probably the average of wounds a model has in Age of Sigmar is, let's say, 2 on the average. I know there's loads of 1 wound model units and everything like that, but there's a lot of 2 wound wounds. Like, just look at Stormcaster, prime example. An extra D3 models running away is like an extra D3 2 wounds, isn't it, at the end of the day? So that is a good ability, but just bear in mind that it's not just Legion of Blood, it has to be Legion of Blood vampires. So Vargheists, Blood Knights, any of the vampire heroes, you can definitely see this having play and being used, and try to remember it, as it could be pretty important, especially when it comes to, counting enemy models and objectives, something like that. Okay, and then on to the next one, which is going to be the Favoured Retainers. So, Death Rattle Legions are favoured tools of the Legion of Blood, and they enact their master's plots with unfeeling dedication. So ignore negative modifiers to hit and wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Legion of Blood Death Rattle units while they are wholly within 12 inches or a friendly of Legion of Blood Vampire unit or wholly within 18 inches of a friendly Legion of Blood Vampire hero that is a general. So just FYI, so when you think about, your units again, Vargheists, Blood Knights, but it will be those heroes as well for those wholly within 12-inch range there, and obviously your general, and as Neferata would count as a general, she's in Legion of Blood, even if she isn't, that is wholly within 18 inches of her, and then obviously whoever you make your general as well, so just bear that in mind. My thoughts on this is, obviously it's good, it's a nice ability. It meant more to me in 2nd edition because, the flip side there, I said Immortal Majesty wasn't as good, and that's better now, and then Favour Retainers I think was better then, because there wasn't really many ways to give you +1 to hit in the game, overall, and now there are loads of ways to do it, or there's mainly all-out attack, which is easy to get off, isn't it, at the end of the day. So even if the enemy did make you -1 to hit, you could just do that. But bear in mind, you could do that, and that means the enemy just can't make any modifiers to your hit roll, so you'll be hitting pretty damn well for your skeletons. But also, remember, Death Rattle, so Graveguard. Graveguard are a big, 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 nice unit in this book, which we'll get to when we review their War Scrolls later on in this series. But you can just see how this is being useful already. So this is nice, but the biggest part I'd like to say with this is, although there's not as much things in the game that make you minuses to wound, so it's not really as much as a threat, there's not many ways to get you pluses to wound. So as soon as you go from, I don't know, you could be wounded on 4s, now you're wounded on 5, so the enemy's made you -1. Very annoying. Really, obviously, is going to affect the average on your dice rolls to try and get the enemy to make as many save rolls as possible. So just stopping the enemy from doing that is really, really nice. Because like I said, the enemy can't cause that much of a problem making -1 to wound a lot of the time, but when they can, there's not a lot you can do to fix it. Certainly not nearly as much as when the enemy makes you -1 to hit. So those are the battle traits, and then going on to the command traits. So Instruments of Neferata's Will. Loving the names already. So we've got Legion of Blood General only, and the first one is going to be Premeditated Violence. So if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this general is a 6, that attack scores 2 hits on the target instead of 1. Make a wound and save roll for each hit. Which, this is an ability that you'll find buried or maybe in an obvious place in pretty much every new battle tome, but doesn't mean it's a bad one. That can be particularly useful. Bear in mind though that these traits will not affect a mount. But we do now have Avengorian Lords. It's not all about those Vampire Lords and Zombie Dragons, is it? So it's an alright one if you want to go offensive output with your general. And then number 2, we have Soul Crushing Contempt. So subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of enemy units while they are within 3 inches of this general. So you can see where the whole bravery bomb sort of idea that I was mentioning earlier when I talked about Immortal Majesty from the battle trait there can really stack up, as well with the ability you get from the Allegiance ability to make the enemy minuses to their bravery for having nearby Death Rattle and dead walking units in front of them. So that means you can make them potentially -3 bravery, and then for any models that flee from the unit, that unit then suffers an extra D3 models to flee within this army if you have everything signed up. And basically, the other good thing about Legion of Blood, although it has to be a vampire for the Immortal Majesty to make an extra D3 models flee, your general's probably going to be a vampire. I mean, it might be a White King, but probably will be a vampire in most cases, so you don't have to worry too much about that being a problem. Pretty much. So yeah, you see how you can start stacking the anti-bravery stuff against your opponent basically there if you want to go that route. And then number 3, we have Aristocracy of Blood. So you can reroll charge rolls for friendly Legion of Blood units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this general. See, I like this quite a bit because bear in mind now you can only do that reroll charge roll command ability once because you can't spam it, because you can't use the same command ability in the same phase more than once. Currently in Age of Sigmar at the moment with 3rd edition. So just bear that in mind. That's something new that's good to remember to make this more useful. And then also, as well as obviously benefiting all your other units in range, remember that the general is in range of himself. So he will be, as long as he has Legion of Blood, which he will have to be, pretty sure to have this command trait, he'll be re-rolling those charge rolls himself. So if he is a, I don't know, Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, let's say, most of your generals within this book, to be fair, are going to be fairly combat orientated. Some more than others, but pretty much all combat orientated. So you're going to want him to re-roll the charge rolls. So yeah, generally a good ability. And if he's on a, Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, like I said, a decent sized base, so that wholly within 12 inches is actually a decent sized bubble to try and get most of your units you need within it. And then number 4, we have Aura of Dark Majesty. So subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target this general. So again, this is usually an ability that you'll see some rare in every battle tome. There's some command trait that offers it, or artifact or whatever. And it's, although how basic and simple it is, it's never really done me wrong. I mean, I quite often take it if I've had a second artifact sort of like spare and there's nothing else that really jumps out to me. And I don't just mean Soulblight Gravelords, I mean generally any army. So for example, my Ravengers in Slaves of Darkness, they have, I believe it's a command trait that makes the enemy -1 to hit, and that saved my general who had it more times than I can count, really. So I can't really diss this one. It is generally quite good, although how simple it may sound. And then number 5, you've got the Walking Death. So if the unmodified wound roll for an attack made with a melee weapon by this general is a 6, that attack inflicts a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon used for the attack. And the attack sequence ends. Do not make a save roll. I really like this, mainly because in Age of Sigmar now, saves are very, 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 very good, especially with so many all-out defense going about. So what it means is that you can try and stack a rend against your enemy to try and counter it. But if you can just turn your attacks into mortal wounded anyway, and I get it, you do need to get a 6 for it to actually do anything, which is how Keepers of Secrets used to work, and it might still work basically for all their attacks. This is still good. Again, won't affect the mount, but if you've got like a Avengori Lord, that's going to be useful. Even, to be fair, a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon with the Lance, if you manage to get like 1/6 or something, that's like going to be on the charge. What's that? A flat 3 mortal wounds, I think. It can be useful. The only thing I will say is that I do think the command traits for the Legion of Blood are generally quite good, so it's quite tough competition to put it on just like a Lance for the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, but I can see this being put on an Avengori Lord. But the next one is my favourite, because this is number 6, and this is Sanguine Blur. So friendly units that start a pile-in move wholly within 12 inches of the general can move an extra 3 inches when they pile in. So this is not the better pile in extra bonus, where it means that you can now pile in basically 6 inches into combat. In terms of if you weren't already in combat, you have to already been in combat. But where this is really good, because now it means things like, skeletons that are really slow, Graveguard are really slow, you're really helping out their moving, you're helping out your repositioning, because there's a lot of synergy being in range of auras and stuff within the Soulblight Gravelords book, so it's good for repositioning in the combat phase in your opponent's turn. It's allowed you to move in their turn that extra, because now things are just moving 6 inches, which is huge, because also you don't pick a unit that's wholly within 12 inches of you like at the start before they pile in an attack. It's just everything, including the general. And then where it gets really nice with things like Deadwalker zombies that are actually piling 6 inches, and they can actually pile into combat from 6 inches away. Now, that's a 9-inch pile-in, which is absolutely huge. So that's why I like this. Unfortunately, I don't actually own enough zombies in real life to be able to push that to its limit, but it's definitely something I would like to try out, as I think there's a really, really nice bit of synergy there. And that is why it is my favourite. I often say in Age of Sigmar, you win the game because of movement a lot of the time, and that is a really, really useful ability, and you don't often see it in many other places. So for the command traits, Sanguine Blur is going to be my favourite one. And then my second favourite one is probably going to have to be the Aristocracy of Blood for those re-roll charges. Part of me wants to say, stack the Bravery Bomb and all that sort of thing, but you can't always guarantee it. If you're going against an enemy army with really good bravery, you're going to be annoyed, aren't you, if nothing's really going off, if you put a lot of effort into it. But I think on average that could be pretty good. And then the other ones are a nice sort of like more damage output you could potentially do, and then obviously trying to save you with that -1 to your enemies' hit rolls against you, which is always nice. And then going on to the next bit, which is going to be the Artifacts of Power. And these are going to be the Treasures of the Bloody Court. So the first one is the Ring of Dominion. So each time the bearer is picked to fight in the combat phase, you can pick one enemy model within 3 inches of the bearer and roll a dice. On a 5+, pick one of the model's melee weapons. That unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon you picked. You cannot pick a melee weapon that refers to a damage table or ability to determine its damage. So basically, can't really use mount attacks as much. You can do, but the problem is a lot of them have got damage characteristics put into that damage table. But some of them are like D6, aren't they? You know, if you look at Zombie Dragon's Maw as an example, basically every Dragon's Maw, near enough, D6 damage, right? And it's good, but you just need to roll that 5 up. As much as I want to just say straight away, I love this and I think I want to use it all the time, it'd be great. You need to use that 5 up, which is sad. But the good thing is that it's each time the bearer is picked to fight in the combat phase. I could easily see this just being a once per game thing that really sucks, and you would never see it or it'd never get picked. But it being each time the bearer is picked to fight, so that could potentially be at most, 10 times in the game? Probably on average, maybe 6 times, 5 times. They say probably 5 times on average in the course of a game. You're going to roll that 5 up at some point. So I would definitely actually try this out. And this is one I'm going to try out, but I won't straight away just go and say it's really good because, you know, there's a big chance of randomness to this that it might not go off when you need it to. And then number 2, you've got Shade Glass Decanter. So after armies have been set up, but before the first battle round begins, you can pick one enemy model on the battlefield. In your hero phase, if the bearer and that hero are on the battlefield, you can roll a dice. If the roll is equal to or greater than the number of current battle rounds, that hero suffers 1 mortal wound. So this kind of reminds me of an artifact you could get from playing Grand Host Nagash, which was a sub-legion within the Legions of Nagash battle tome. But that meant the enemy just took, I think it was D3 mortal wounds straight away. And then every subsequent of one of your hero phases, you'd roll dice, and on a 4 up, they would take another more wound. So this is not as good as that. But you'll be doing, probably 3 mortal wounds to that enemy hero, roughly, throughout the game on this. Which is okay, but it's just, I'll just say it now, not the best artifact we've got here. So moving on to number 3, we've got Orb of Enchantment. So once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy hero within 3 inches of the bearer and roll a dice. On a 3+, that hero cannot be picked to fight in that phase. So I think how this used to work, so I think it was just once per game, like it is here, but I don't think you had to roll. But I can't remember, I didn't really use it too much. However, what I will say is what it used to be, used to stop using abilities and stuff as well, I think. So it used to be a bit better is what I'm trying to get at from my memory, if it serves me correctly. But I think it's still really good. There's plenty of things out there. Again, you have to pick one enemy hero, which I would say maybe even in 2nd edition, there are units out there where you go, well, that unit's going to rip me in half or something, and it's not a hero, so it's not going to help me if it doesn't attack me. A lot of the damage dealers now in 3rd edition are these big monstrous heroes you see going around because they benefit from a lot of the new changes in 3rd edition. So this artifact, Orb of Enchantment, I can see having more of a use in 3rd edition. And I would, again, like, presuming you're going to a tournament, that sort of setting, you don't know who you're going to fight against, it's hard to know if it's definitely worth taking. But because of the amount of things there are out there, like, you know, Archaon is a great example. But there are other things out there as well that are very strong and very powerful. Maw Crushers, Stone Horns, Morathi, even a Beast Lord, of course. This can definitely have some use. So I am recommending this one, the Orb of Enchantment. It's the favourite one I've came across so far in these artefacts for the Treasures of the Bloody Court that we've read through so far. So going on to the next one, number 4, is Soulbound Garments. So add 1 to the save rolls for attacks that target the bearer. So nice and simple. Now where we just said the Orb of Enchantment has got better in 3rd edition, with seeing more of those monsters and stuff running around, there's monstrous heroes. The Soulbound Garments have got worse, basically, because add 1 to save rolls, go back to 2nd edition, I am in love with it, right? I'm saying as many stuck into your save is amazing, especially you've got like a Vampire Lord and a Zombie Dragon has already got a 3-up save, now he's got a 2-up save, you know, with a new all-out defense, plus that on, give him another +1 to his save, then he's got a 1-up save. But of course, where it is worse now is because you can't stack that +1 to your save rolls. So if it was +1 to the save characteristic, that would be different. But because it's +1 to the save roll, it means that you can't stack that other way defense. So this just means you generally have a flat +1 to save in, combat. In shooting, generally a very good thing. Like I said, a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon with his 3+ normal save now has a 2+ save, which is generally really, really good. But it's just because you've got work defense, and I get it. You're spending command points to use that, so it's not as simple as just saying you get that anyway. But you can, if you've got the command points, which you can fairly easily stack up, get that anyway, basically. So it's good, but you're not really getting anything special, unfortunately. And then at number 5, we've got Soulblight Arcana. That's probably not how it's pronounced, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it. I'm sure someone can let me know that in the comments. What this does is once per enemy hero phase, when an enemy wizard successfully casts a spell within 8 inches of the bearer, and that spell is not unbound, even if a friendly wizard attempts to unbind the spell, before resolving the effects of that spell, you can roll a dice. On a 5+, that spell is unbound. So I like this because it's kind of like saying fuck you, Croak. Because sometimes when they cast things on a ridiculously high casting value, like I don't know, the Lord Croak go, I've got this on a 14, and you're there with your 2 dice, like, well, okay then, enjoy playing your own game. This means you've got a chance to stop it, and that's why I really like it, because it's once per enemy hero phase, so it's not just once per game or something stupid like that, it's once per enemy hero phase. It's a little bit worrying when you first read it, that once per an enemy hero phase, so you're fine. And a 5-up means that you'll be stopping it a third of the time, which, to be honest, if it was a 4-up, I'd be thinking that's a bit silly, because it's kind of like every turn you've got a 50-50 of just denying an enemy spell. Again, some people may disagree with me, and they may point to there's probably better spellcasters out there that have got easier ways just to deny the enemy spellcasting, but this is just an artifact that you could have, I don't know, on a White King or something. So I think that this is fair enough, and I do like it as well. And then last but not least, for number 6, we have got the Amulet of Screams. So once per battle, when an enemy wizard successfully casts a spell that is not unbound, you can say that the bearer will use their Amulet of Screams. If you do so, that wizard suffers D3 mortal wounds after the effects of that spell have been resolved. And this, as much as I like the idea of just saying fuck you, Croak, with this, I just don't really feel like it has the same long-lasting effects, because number 1, he's probably not going to care about it. I know you can put this on another wizard, it doesn't have to be Lord Croak, but trust me, after my own personal scars I've had with that frog, it will all be going on him when I ever play against him. But this is only once per battle, right? Literally what I was saying with the Arcana one, number 5, and I was going like, oh, you get a bit worried when you say once per, because you think you might say battle. Well, this one actually is once per battle, so not a massive fan of it. But then again, if it was every phase doing D3 more wins to the enemy every time they cast a spell with a certain wizard, I could see that being a problem. So I find this just a bit mediocre. And to be honest, like, you might end up going, well, what if I've got, an extra artifact I can pick, and I'm not really too sure which ones to go for, even though I just explained to you that this is not a good one. And you pick this one. At the end of the day, there's probably better generic artifacts, and I say there probably is, there definitely is better generic artifacts in the core rules for the game. So it's not a great one, but it's quite cool. I'll read the lore for it. So the bearer of this artifact can flood the foe's mind with tormented howls of damned souls, leaving them exposed to their sorcery. Yeah, I think this sounds pretty cool in the lore. It just doesn't really transfer that cool over. Again, being basically go to the enemy that might only have, a wizard with a 5 wound characteristic, let's say, and they've already taken a couple wounds and they're going to try and cast another spell. So you're trying to cast another spell, you might die, but that wizard's probably maybe going to die anyway at that point, so it doesn't care. So yeah, not a great one, but my favourite ones out of all of these are going to be probably the Orb of Enchantment, because I think it's just generally really cool, to glance into the swirling depths of this crystal orb is to become hypnotized by alluring visions and half-glimpsed futures. So I think, it's just really, really cool. I love it. I love that sort of thing with the Legion of Blood. I sort of hinted at that when I talked about the lore for the Soulblight Gravelords, when I was sort of saying that, some vampires have such great charisma, they can sort of enthrall mortals to get them to do their bidding and to make them have to enact their will. And Legion of Blood definitely play on that sort of espionage and stuff, and I can definitely see the Orb Enchantment coming in there. So that's why I really, really like that. And just clearly in the game, it's really good with loads of those hero monsters running around, like I mentioned. So yes, I do like that one. And then secondly, I would probably say the Arcana and number 5. That is because it's really good because there's a lot of magic going around in the game at the moment. Against, obviously, if you're going against, Khorne or Fire Slayers, I think it's probably not going to be the most useful spell to use. But, they're very obscure armies to mention. They're definitely on that one side of thing. And then the other side, you've got Tzeentch and Seraphon Starborn, which are definitely armies that you want to shut down magic with. That's just some examples, and there's more examples of armies you want to shut down the magic of armies that you're not really too bothered. So those are my 2 favourite ones there. And then just like as a third one, just to say, I think Ring of Dominion is nice, but it's just, you can't guarantee it, but I think it is nice. So yeah, that is the Legion of Blood. And then the next one we're going to look at is going to be the Legion of Night, led by, of course, the incredibly unself-centered Manfred von Carstein. So the first thing you're obviously going to get is the battle traits, and the first one is going to be the Bait. So this is add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target friendly Legion of Night Death Rattle and friendly Legion of Night Death Walker units in the first battle round. So just to break down what those Death Rattle units are, these are things like your Black Knights, your Skeleton Warriors, your Grave Guard, your White Kings, etc. And then when it comes to the Dead Walkers, this is going to be things like your Direwolves, your Dead Walker zombies, and I believe the Corpse card's a Dead Walker, but obviously we'll get to that when we review it. And this is definitely a good ability because you may, when you first read it, in the first battle round, you might not be planning on charging the enemy turn 1. The enemy can easily charge you turn 1, especially if they're an Alpha Strike army. There's a lot of things out there that are very hard hitting at the moment, and they want to get to you straight away. For example, sometimes when you go against Ogre tribes, there might be quite a Beast Claw Raider heavy list, and that might want to punch you straight away. So it's very nice to have that add 1 to save rolls for them. But just bear in mind that obviously all-out defense, which is add 1 to your save rolls, can't really stack with this unless you're using it for going against enemy Ren purposes. Of course, this would definitely be a lot better if it was add 1 to your save characteristic. That would be nice. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because when this book came out, end of 2nd edition, we didn't know how about all-out defense was going to change, everything else. So just thought it would be something I'd mention. But as much as you can easily just chuck out, well, add 1 to save rolls is pointless because, all-out defense you can just do. Right, but you can't do that for every Dead Walker or Death Rattle unit in your army. This is just flat out your whole army. So if you do want to go Death Rattle or Dead Walker heavy, this is quite a nice one you can do for if you want to try some sort of alpha striking, or if you're expecting to be hit by the enemy pretty damn hard. And the other thing to say is that it's just add 1 to save rolls, full stop. It doesn't need to be melee, so it is going to help you against those shooting armies as well, which is very nice as there's not loads of ways to be able to negate that. And then going on to the next thing, which is Ageless Cunning. So instead of setting up a Legion of Knights unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say it is set up in ambush as a reserve unit. You can set up 1 reserve unit in ambush for each unit you have already set up on the battlefield. At the end of any of your movement phases, you can set up 1 or more of these units on the battlefield, wholly within 6 inches of the battlefield edge, and more than 9 inches away from all enemy units. At the start of the 4th battle round, reserve units that are still set up in ambush are destroyed. So when it says at the end of any of your movement phases, basically, don't make it the 4th or 5th battle round. Feels a little bit misleading because you only have battle round 1, battle round 2 and battle round 3 to do it, but usually that's enough for what you want to achieve. And as much as this is good, and I do like it, and I do like the idea of being able to deep strike behind your enemy, just flat out that already is good. But if you're using this as a way to sort of like deep strike and a guaranteed charge, everything else, there's ways you can help your charging, but there's no guarantee for it. So I wouldn't really be using this as I'm going to set up a Terrorgeist to deep strike, and then that Terrorgeist is definitely going to get in and definitely be able to attack, guaranteed. Like Moser Guard, for example, when they go with that guy who points at things with the fish, who makes them, like, I think, +3 to charge and all that, and the reroll and charge rolls, etc. Not like that, so it's not a guaranteed charge, basically. But, what this is useful for is making the enemy always have to think like the end, like you can deep strike behind them, because then they can't really leave their backfield too much. They've got to try and screen against it. And then by you setting up things like a Terrorgeist as an example, or Graveguard, or something else that's heavy hitting in reserve, it means that that unit, monster, etc., is not going to be shot off the table before you can do anything about it. And also, by having like something like a Terrorgeist in reserve, your enemy's going to be thinking, I have to be careful how I move my guys and how they're going to make sure they screen against you, because they don't want the chance for a Terrorgeist charging them. Like I said, you can't really rely on it. Like, again, you're 9 inches away from the enemy, you can make it better, but just say 9 inches, that's 9-inch charge, chances are you're not going to get that. But you can't guarantee it that you're not going to get it, or you will get it, and the enemy is the same. They can't guarantee that you won't get it. So it makes them have to overthink, and the more basically decisions you have to make your opponent make, the more chance of them making mistakes. Something that I've said many times on the channel before, but it is definitely something that is useful, having that deep striking ability above more than the grave sites. The grave sites aren't bad, but this Aegis kind of really gives you that extra bit of tech that if you want to go the deep striking route, already the Legion of Night are for you. I know you can do it in Kastelai, which we'll get to in a moment with Blood Knight, but you know, you can do it with everything in your Legion of Night. The only thing I will add on then, because this is a specific Legion of Night thing, is that if you look to add in Neferata as an example in this, or Prince Mahordre as just an example, because they have already got their own dynasty sort of keywords, it means that they won't be able to gain the Legion of Night, and they won't be able to set up a reserve. As an example, if you're thinking about doing it, you can't unless they change it. So then those are the battle traits. So the next thing to look at is going to be the command traits. So the rulers of the night. So this is for Legion of Night generals only, of course. And the first one is above suspicion. So if this general is set up in ambush using the Ageless Cunning battle trait above, at the end of your movement phase, you can set this general up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from all enemy units, instead of wholly within 6 inches of the battlefield edge. I really quite like this. It just gives you that more flexibility. Obviously, you have to be 9 inches away from the enemy, which can be a pain. So you can't always plan on, teleporting your general down to where he's going to give all this synergy off. If it's Manfred, for example, and his lovely buff or he can give as being 9 inches from the enemy may play around that to make you stop doing that. Especially, as the game does go on after the first battle round. But it's still very nice, and I do like that. It just gives you that extra flexibility. And then the next one is going to be Swift Forms. So add 2 to the run and charge rolls for this general. I definitely like that, especially with things like if you want to make something just run a flat 6. Now it's 6 plus 2, so take a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. If you wanted it to move a ridiculous amount of movement, as an example, you make it run so that its movement is standard is 14. It's now got plus 8 to it, so that's 22. You get that Amethystine Pinion spell, I believe it's called off. I believe that's another plus 6, so you're looking at, 28 inches off the top of my head with the maths there. It just shows how far you can make this work. And obviously with the charging, you give it Swift Form, you set it up in Ageless Cunning. Now it needs that 7-inch charge, which is the average, and you should chuck yourself a reroll for a CP as well, and chances are you should get that charge off if that's something that you want to guarantee. There you go, it's something you can do. So I like that as well. And then you've got the Unbending Will. So do not take battleshock tests for friendly Legion of Night units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this general. Now when this first came out, this book in 2nd edition, I sniffed at this. I was like, death, a lot of the time you don't need to do battleshocks anyway. But if you do need to do a battleshock test, you can just spam Inspiring Presence. Just do that. However, obviously, 3rd edition, with the 3rd edition glasses on, we know that you cannot just spam Inspiring Presence in Age of Sigmar these days. So this Unbending Will definitely has a lot more play for it, but it's wholly within 12 inches of this general, so not much room there. What I will say is that, obviously, if you've got like a Necromancer and a big block of skeletons or something, he should be able to make sure that everyone is not running away. Or you've got Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragons, again, a great example. Big base size, so that wholly within 12 inches is actually bigger than it sounds. But it's still quite restrictive, and you're still, unless your character, your general who's got this, is just a support piece that's literally just going to be there to try and stop your guys running away, you could do that, but you're obviously missing out on the other command traits you could take. The nice thing about this, obviously, is what I should say, is because, the changes to the war scrolls for the Mortarchs, etc., is that even if you put Manfred von Carstein in this army, he's treated as a general, and it's the same as Neferata and Legion of Blood, in case I didn't mention it. So what that means is that they get all the benefits of being a general, but you can actually pick a general in your army as well, who can have a command trait, so you're not missing out on a command trait, unlike how it was with Legions of Nagash, which is a bit of a pain. So that is Unbending Will, and then going on to the number 4, which is Merciless Hunter. So add 1 to the wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by this general. So that is nice, but just bear in mind that I'm mainly looking at things like Avengori Lord or something like that. Mainly because if you look at a Vampire and Zombie Dragon, which is a go-to monster, you know, when I review Legions of Nagash, I'm pretty sure I use for every example a Vampire and Zombie Dragon because it was basically just the best, biggest kick-ass generic hero monster in the army. His sword or lance is actually going to be hitting on a 3 and wounding on a 3 anyway. So all you'd be doing is making it wounded on 2s, which isn't bad. But, you know, if you want to take Manfred von Carstein into your army, that is actually just a more generic, easier way to get that +1 to wound rolls by his command ability, the Vigor of Undeath. So there are better ways to do it. So I'm not really a fan of the Merciless Hunter. And then you've got Unholy Impetus. I don't know how that's pronounced, but anyway, what does it do? So in the combat phase, if any enemy models are slain by attacks made by melee weapons by this general in that phase, add 1 to the attack characteristics of melee weapons used by friendly Legion of Knights units wholly within 12 inches of this general until the end of that phase. So I really like this. The only problem with it is that obviously the general has to fight first, right? So you want this to be a bigger thing, like a Vampire and Zombie Dragon, Avengori Lord, something like that. And the reason why I said Avengori Lord, just say for the Merciless Hunter, is that because obviously add 1 to wound rolls will benefit all his weapons, not just the hand weapon, because he's not riding a mount, he's just a monster. But anyway, going back to Unholy Impetus, however it's pronounced. I like this, but obviously it involves the general killing something, which usually isn't a problem, especially if you get to something big like that. But it then means that everything else that you wanted to be buffed is now probably going to get hit back before it can make the most out of this buff, which then might contradict the buff or get him +1 to hit. And what I mean by this is that you might have a block of, let's say, 10 Graveguard, let's just say a nearby. I'd say a block as if it's a big number, it's not. But you know, you've got 10 Graveguard, let's say, and then the problem is that, yeah, you've killed something with your general, so now the Graveguard have got an extra attack. Yes. But then the enemy hit back the Graveguard and 5 of them died. So really, was it worth doing the giving them the extra attack by making the general attack first? But things like Skeleton Warriors that really you do want to fight second, because obviously you get to bring models back for how many died. You roll a dice and then on a 4-up, you know, another one comes back. That's a good example of a unit that you're not always going to be wanting to fight first with, and then they're going to massively benefit from this. So I do see this being in place, and there's obviously other things out there. And the enemy can't hit you back with everything first unless they've, I don't know, got something like Lumineth Realm Lords, something annoying like that where they get to pick multiple things. But no, I do like the Unholy. I haven't tried it out, but it's something I do definitely want to try out next time I try Legion of Night. And then number 6, you've got Terrifying Visage. So subtract 1 from wound rolls, 4 rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target this general. That's nice. If it was subtract 1 from hit rolls, I wouldn't really be bothered that much because you can just do all-out attack. But the subtract 1 from wound rolls, yeah, I think that's pretty good. There's not many ways to plus to wound rolls, to be absolutely fair with you. So that's probably going to hurt the enemy quite a lot, especially, I don't know, let's say they're hitting on 3s and they're wounding on 4s. Let's just say now they're wounding on 5s, which is going to make their job of trying to do damage to you a hell of a lot harder. So out of the command traits, what are my favourites? I'm probably going to say my joint favourite is going to be Swift Form and the Unholy Impetus. Again, apologies how that's pronounced. But the reason for this is because Swift Form, I think, is just really good for the reasons I've already mentioned. And then the Unholy, as I'm going to call it, I think that just sounds really, really good. But as I haven't tried it out, I'm not going to get too carried away. But if it works of how I've kind of got strategies in my head to use it, then that'll probably be my favourite. 100%, but I want to try that out first. But I say Swift Form and the Holy are my 2 favourites, and then my third pick would be the Above Suspicion, because being able to drop down anywhere 9 inches away from the enemy is a lot better than obviously hoping to be wholly within 6 inches of that board edge. So yes, those would be my 3, and then after that, as an afterthought, Unbending Will to stop you having to do the Battle Shock. But usually in your Death Army, you have to do a Battle Shock. I find it's just maybe 1 unit, so Inspiring Presence isn't too bad to be used for that. And then going on to the Artefacts of Power, which are going to be the Vaults of Carstinia. So these are for a Legion of Night heroes only. And the first one is going to be the Vial of Pure Blood. So once per battle in your hero phase, you can say that the bearer will drink from their Vial of Pure Blood. If you do so, add 1 to the hit and wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by the bearer until your next hero phase. So I do like this, but only if you're not taking Manfred von Carstein himself, because he gives you very easy access to that add 1 to hit and wound rolls. But if you don't take him, like I said, this is nice just if you want to guarantee the Vampire Lord Zombie Dragon on that charge. It's going to be hitting and wounded on 2s, which is lovely, and other things like Vengorian Lords, etc. I like it, but I wouldn't even consider this if you haven't got something big like that in your army. If you just got Vampire Lords, Necromancers, etc., I wouldn't even worry about this because as nice as add 1 to hit and wound rolls is, if it's just going to be on something small, it's not worth it at all because it's once per battle. It's only really worth it for those bigger things, and even then it's kind of like it's a one-trick pony, you know, it's just like a one-shot thing. So I do like it, but I do think there are better things here. And then going on to the Shard of Night. So ignore the rend characteristic of missile weapons when making save rolls for attacks that target the bearer. Okay, so this is nice, but again, it's missiles, so there are things out there, or there's things in other books that are just like ignore rend, which is just fantastic, right? So against missile weapons, obviously if you know against Cowden Overlords or something else similar to that with lots of high rend and shooting, then this is great, but otherwise pointless. And then the next one we've got is Gem of Exaggeration. So once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer and roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 5, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. On a 6, it suffers D6 mortal wounds. Absolutely pointless. Not even going to give my thoughts on that. It's shit. And then number 4, we have Kyprotaring Cloak. God knows how that is. I'm just going to call it the Cloak. So if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets the bearer is a 1, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all of its attacks have been resolved. So I'm just trying to think. I remember this being an artifact in the Legion of Nagash book and I never used it, but I was wondering back then if it meant for every 1 the enemy unit rolled against you would suffer a mortal wound, or it was just like if it rolls any ones, it's just 1 mortal wound that they take. And I'm still a little bit unsure about that, so if you guys know you have used this, please let me know that in the comments. But just to read it again, in the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets the bearer is a 1, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all of its attacks have been resolved. Now to me, that means for however many ones they roll, they take mortal wound for each one. That's how I read it, but that sounds really powerful, like especially if you're taking this on your beat stick, so it is going to get hit a lot by the enemy. I'd definitely take this artifact hands down pretty much all the time. So that makes me think maybe I'm wrong on how I read it. So like I say, if you do know how it is, and it might just be the 1 mortal wound the enemy takes, let me know that as well. And if that is the case and just take 1 mortal wound, then yeah, I don't like this artifact. It's pointless. It's one of those things where it's like it's either really good or not very good. So, going on to the next one, which is number 5, which is a Morbeg's Claw, of which there has been a change to it in the FAQ, which is the last sentence, so I'll change that as we get to it. But it says, in your hero phase, you can say that the bearer will carve sigils into the ground using Morbeg's Claw. If you do so, add 2 to the casting rolls for friendly Legion of Night Wizards wholly within 12 inches of the bearer, until your next hero phase. However, so this is where things change. It says the bearer cannot make a normal move, run, retreat, make a charge, move, or shoot or fight until your next hero phase. So basically they can't do anything, right? Apart from they cast spells, which is, presumably a wizard's going to be doing this, so that's a good thing. Now, I have used this before in the Legion of the Nagash book, where it was very similar, and I basically used it on a Necromancer who wasn't really going anywhere anyway, and he was pretty cheap for points, so I just used it on him, and then suddenly before you know, Manfred von Carstein's got +2 to cast. Your other Necromancers, including the one who is drawing the sigil, is +2 to cast. So I do like this on quite a cheap hero. It is very useful just to basically kind of as much as you can guarantee getting your spells off for a turn, as your Legion of Knights, or just to be honest with you, Soulblight Gravelords Wizards have got some pretty nice spells that can definitely debuff the enemy and definitely help you out as well. So I do like this artifact. And then number 6, we have the Cursed Blade. So after armies have been set up, but before the first battle round, you can pick one enemy hero on the battlefield in your hero phase. If the bearer and that hero that you picked up on the battlefield roll a dice, and on a 5+, that hero suffers 1 mortal wound, and you can heal 1 wound allocated to the bearer. Now, this is nice because it's a way to also heal us, to take mortal wound, chip damage off like a support 5 wound enemy hero, let's say, or something a bit bigger maybe. But this is on a 5 up, so this is not even 50% of the time this is going off. So this is a third of the time, which means you're at least guarantee this happening once per game, which just sounds really boring. Maybe twice per game if you're lucky, which to me is just very boring. So I wouldn't take the Cursed Blade. So looking at the artifacts, which one would I take? What are my top picks? So I like Morgasts Claw. I think that is very good. That's probably my favourite one, to be honest with you. It's probably the one I would take most of the time, maybe 4 out of 5 times. I like Vial or Pure Blood if you are taking a bit of a beat stick just to give it that buff, but I probably got Manfred von Castle on my army anyway, as I love that character and that model, so I'm going to be bringing it. And the Cloak I like, but I think I like because I think it's too strong, and I think I'm probably wrong on that, so I'm a bit hesitant on that one. So yeah, my favourite one is Morgasts Claw, and then after that I would probably take Vial Pure Blood if Manfred's not in the army, but if he is, I would take the... it's a difficult one really, because the Shard of Midnight is only good if you're going against missile weapons, so I wouldn't take that. So I would probably, just to be honest with you, take one of the artifacts that are very good from the core rules. Make someone like an extra wizard for your army, or make someone a special wizard, or a 5-up ward save or something, instead of the ones we've got here. And again, you can look at the core rule artifacts for a lot of armies that you're kind of thinking, oh, I don't really like the artifacts, just pick one of those because they're just, generally very generic but very good. Okay, and then that is done for the legions. So we're now going to move on to the dynasties, and we're going to start off with the Vyrkos Dynasty. So this is the new one, the wolfy looking vampires, as we've talked about. And firstly, starting with the battle traits, which are very fittingly named the Beast Within. So the strength of the pack is the Wolf, which is add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by friendly Vyrkos Dynasty Death Rattle and Vyrkos Dynasty Deadwalker units while they're wholly within 9 inches of any friendly Vyrkos Dynasty vampire heroes. Bit of a mouthful there, but it has to be a vampire hero. So you might be thinking, I'm a Death Rattle, going to have a White King nearby to give him this buff. No, it has to be vampire, unfortunately, but, there's plenty of vampires in this book, and there's some cheap ones available to the Vyrkos Dynasty specifically as well, like a couple of the new name characters like the Rat Prince, etc. So that's very good, especially how you can raise the add 1 to hit rolls, but add 1 to wound rolls not so easily. So you can make things like your, because it's Death Rattle as an example, you can make your Graveguard do that better wounding as well. Doesn't just have to be the standard, Skeleton Warriors. You can make it think a bit spicy, like the Graveguard. And then obviously Deadwalkers. If you really want to go that way, you could do it with those zombies, or direwolves even. Try and make direwolves a bit more punchy. I mean, I've always loved direwolves and always stood what they're good for. But now, as you can't string them out as much, and you've got to take them units of 10, then for me, they've got to make up a bit more on the combat side to make them always worth it. So that is the strength of the pack, is the wolf, and I'm pretty sure that's a quote from Game of Thrones. And then the strength of the wolf is the pack, which is the next one, which again I'm pretty sure is a quote from Game of Thrones. And you can reroll casting rolls for friendly Vyrkos Dynasty vampire wizards. That is just one sentence, and it's all you need, because that is absolutely fantastic. Again, if you take Manfred or Neferata, etc. in this army, they're not going to benefit from that because they won't gain the Vyrkos Dynasty keyword. But everyone else who hasn't already got like a Legion or Dynasty keyword will get this, which is, I think, just great. Being able to reroll those casting rolls is not really too much to say about this. However, because you can reroll casting rolls for friendly of those Vyrkos wizards, what that means is that if you really wanted to fish for those like 9 plus like unmodified casting rolls to get your Locust Striation abilities off that we talked about in the last video, then you could play with fire and try and get it off and try and roll a bit higher. But even obviously when you just fail, or you're going against a lot of anti-magic from your opponent, this is definitely going to be useful, and your spells are something that you kind of rely on in this army. Not as much as I would say like Fleshy Courts, for example, that really rely on getting their spells off, and there's not too many ways to buff it. In this army, not as like dependent on them, but they certainly are a nice bonus to give your army. So being able to reroll your casting is absolutely huge. And yeah, just a fantastic flat out buff. So I really do like that. And then going on to the command traits, which are called the Alpha Predators. So this is for Vyrkos Dynasty generals only. And this is going to be number 1, the Pack Alpha. So once per turn, this general can use a command ability without a command point being spent. This would have been really good in 2nd edition, but in 3rd edition not as good because you generate a lot of command points. Not as much as I would say as I first thought before we actually played 3rd edition, but when we were reading the rules, I was like, you have so many command points all the time. You get halfway through the game, sometimes like, bloody hell, I've spent all of them so quickly. This is not good. But so this might be useful for you in that case, but overall you do generally get a lot of command points compared to when this book first came out. So that's not my favourite. Then the next one is going to be number 2, which is driven by the Death Stench. So you can reroll charge rolls for friendly Vyrkos Dynasty units wholly within 9 inches of the general. That's fantastic. That means that the problem you've got with the reroll charges for that command ability you've got in the charge phase that you can only use once, really, can't you? So this just lets you be able to use it as many times as you need to, that are within the restrictions here, but also the general can use it. So I really, really like the driven by Death Stench command trait. And then you've got the Kin of the Wolf. So once per battle at the end of your movement phase, you can say that this general will summon a pack of direwolves to the battle. If you do so, you can add 1 unit of up to 5 direwolves to your army. Set up that unit wholly within 9 inches of this general and more than 9 inches away from all enemy units. I do really like this. I mean, it might not be the best one here, but you are just getting a pre-summoned unit, which is not a bad thing at all, just to be that objective grabbing. It's a small unit of 5. It means that it doesn't have to abide by the pain in the arse coherency rule. So yeah, I do like the King of the Wolf, and who doesn't like the idea of summoning 5, direwolf models? They're absolutely fantastic. They're beautiful. Buy more direwolves. And then number 4, we have the Hunter's Snare. So if this general contests an objective, the number of models this general counts is equal to their wounds characteristics. So you've got a Vampalon Zombie Dragon, that's 14 wounds, isn't it? So that's not bad as an example. But I think this was definitely better in 2nd edition, where a lot more things were dependent on objective grabbing, and there wasn't as much of, obviously, like there might be a 4 wound, models that count as 2 models in objective now, and monsters count as 5. There wasn't really as much of that going on, so this has definitely got less value, in my honest opinion, in 3rd edition, especially when you have things like battle tactics and grand strategies anyway to get VPs. It's not all about those objectives, so this is not as good anymore. Which then leads us to number 5, which is Spore Trackers. So at the start of your hero phase, friendly Vyrkos Dynasty Deadwalker units wholly within 9 inches of this general can make a normal move of up to 3 inches they cannot run. Which you can see is how the Deadwalker sort of emphasis of why you should take Deadwalkers in this sub-legions is really coming in, because you can make like Deadwalker zombies as an example move 7 inches, which with them being able to do their good version of a piling, which is being able to pile into combat from 6 inches away. Now you mean that their threat range has gone anything from 13 inches, which is a guaranteed 13 inches as well. No charge rolls needed. It means that your direwolves are now moving 13 inches. And it also means that things like Corpse Cart, which I said are the Deadwalkers, they are Deadwalkers, remembered now, they're now moving 7 inches as well, so they can keep up with everything else. So I do like that command trait quite a bit. Obviously, if you're going Deadwalkers. If you're not going Deadwalkers, then it's just plain and obvious not very good. But if you are going Deadwalker route, I do like Spore Trackers. It really does help with that movement for sure. And again, it's an aura effect, so it's going to affect all your Deadwalkers within that range. But going on to the last one, which is United by Blood. So this general can attempt to unbind one spell in the enemy hero phase in the same manner as a wizard. If this general is already a wizard, they can attempt to unbind one extra spell in the enemy hero phase. Don't like that at all. I think the Arcane Tome that turns someone into a wizard and makes someone a special wizard also allows them to do a unbind as well. So yeah, United by Blood, not a fan as well at all. And I know that Arcane Tome is an artifact. I believe it's not a command trait, but still don't like that. There are better things. So what would I pick here? For me personally, I'm more likely to go with the driven by Death Stench, because those reroll for charging is going to be great for what I want to do. What I would also say is that the Kin of the Wolf I like, because I like being able to summon on 5 direwolves, but I reckon the key one here, because like personally in my collection, despite having I don't know, many thousands of Soulblight Gravelords in points that I own in my collection. Somewhere up to like 10,000 points of them. Despite that, I don't actually really have too many dead walker units. I mean, I do have a lot of dials and do have a corpse cart, but that's about it. So I don't have loads of zombie models to really put an emphasis on. But if I did, the point I'm trying to get to is I'd say the Spore Trackers is probably the one for the win. I would say out of it, but out of my collection, I'd definitely go for the Driven by a Death Stench. But I'm interested in trying quite a few of these because there are some good ones here. And obviously some ones that I would say not as good, like Pack Alpha, United by Blood, and the Hunter Snare. I think they all are equally not very particularly good, but I'd say the Hunter Snare out of all of them is the better one. Okay, so then going on to the Artifacts of Power, which are Trophies of the Hunt, which are your Vyrkos Dynasty heroes only. So, the Orphan Khan, careful, nuclear bombers drop my head now I mention that word. So, what does number 1 do? It's friendly Soulblight Gravelord units are affected by Deathless Minion battle traits while they're wholly within 18 inches of the bearer instead of 12 inches now. It's not bad, but I think because your grave sites give it now, I don't really want to waste an artifact on this. I mean, you may argue differently, but yeah, so I wouldn't go for this. But if you want that reliability of giving your big aura to a big Vampire Zombie Dragon, again, a great example of a big base. Now you make the aura really big and you don't have to worry about always being within range of grave sites, but you get so many grave sites you can generally make this happen and other heroes, so if you wanted to you could do that, but I wouldn't worry too much. And then number 2 we've got Cloak of the Night Prowler. So the bearer can pile in an extra 3 inches when they make a piling move. So as far as I can read this, is that this is the bad piling move, right? Like this is good, obviously piling 6 inches, but this isn't piling 6 inches away into combat like we said for the Deadwalker Zombies just a moment ago. But this is still good, the extra 3 inches, because this is being put onto a single model unit, obviously, because it's a hero. What that does mean is that obviously then changes the piling, where you don't have to pile into the closest enemy model. You can just pile into the unit, which means that this can be quite a good way to try and move your hero about, to try and shift him around in the combat phase if you want to shift around the buff aura he's given off, or being able to use command ability, etc. And then going on to the Sangdron, something like that. So pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. If the bearer made a charge move in the same turn, add D3 to the attack characteristics of that weapon until the end of that turn. I like that quite a bit, to be honest with you. That's pretty nice, isn't it? But I say I like it. The reason why I like it is because it's not just once per battle, right? You have to charge, but that D3 is just unreliable, isn't it? So basically, on average, you're adding 2 to the attack characteristics if he's charged. It's good, especially if it's like on a Vampire Zombie Dragon with the Lance, so it makes that extra benefit when it charges. But yeah, I think there's better artifacts, but it's not terrible. Number 4, we've got Villainous Fang. So once per battle in your charge phase, you can say that the bearer will be imbued with Villainous Stealth. If you do so, until the end of that phase, add 1 to the charge rolls for the bearer for each other friendly Vyrkos Dynasty Vampire hero on the battlefield. Okay, so this can be really good. At most 2,000 point army, you got 6 heroes. Let's say you got 6 vampires, best case scenario. Probably not often the case, but if you did, obviously add 6 to your charge rolls. But let's say you've got 4 vampires, which is especially in a Vyrkos Dynasty, you want those vampires, don't you? Because they're the only things that are going to give you the most out of your battle traits, for example. So let's say you've got 4. Let's add in 4 to your charge rolls, which isn't bad for that one person. So yeah, it's good, but again, if you want to guarantee your charges, then yes. And I don't want to keep a mention of Vampire Zombie Dragon, but that's the one that's going to benefit the most. But I don't really like using artifacts and command traits. You may notice this when I review this sort of stuff. All focusing into just making one thing big and strong, because I kind of feel like as soon as that big and strong cool thing you've got is dead, then everything else is useless for it, right? I like the ones that add the synergy, so you're not just relying on that one model. Okay, but then you've got number 5, which is Terminus Cloak. So once per battle, at the start of the enemy hero phase, you can say that the bearer will stop the Terminus Cloak. So if you do so, until the end of that phase, subtract 1 for casting rolls for enemy wizards. Yeah, I think that's good. Again, once per battle, but subtracting 1 to enemy casting rolls. is very nice, especially when there's plenty of things out there that are just like +3 to like cast or something. So at least this gives you some sort of attempt of trying to be able to unbind it, right? So that is nice, but again, it's only once per battle. And then number 6, we've got Standard of Orphan Watch. So once per battle at the start of the hero phase, you can say that the bearer will raise the standard of the Orphan Watch. If you do so until the end of that turn, each time your opponent spends a command point, roll a dice on a 5+, you receive an extra command point. Right, I can see this being useful in 2nd edition, not as useful in 3rd edition. And again, it's still good. You probably will get a fair few command points from this because how many your opponent will be spending. But you also have quite a lot as well. So it's not as a high valued resource like we talked about when we mentioned the pack alpha from the command traits that they've got for the Vyrkos. So the artifacts of power, the trophies of the hunt, I wouldn't say they're the best ones that we've read so far, but they're not bad. My favourites, I would probably say, I like the -1 to enemy casting, but again, if they're not really a magic dominant army, they're not going to be too bothered by it. So my personal favourites are probably going to the Filness Vang, just to guarantee those charge rolls, something big like your Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. I do like the Cloak of the Night Prowler, just to help with your movement around. And then I like the one that gives you D3 extra attacks, but it's not as useful as the Villainous Fang because I think that should guaranteeing your charge is more important than getting those extra attacks. But I think the extra attacks is fun. And then the one that makes your death as many in only 18 inches isn't that bad. But to be honest with you, I'd probably say the best one is making you pile in that extra 3 inches. So I think that's pretty useful. If you're not going to go with a combat heavy hero, but if you are going to go combat heavy hero, I'm torn between the Villainous Fang or the one that gives you those D3 extra attacks. To be actually completely honest with you, I would probably, unless you had so many enhancements to be able to pick from, I would just pick from the core rules. I think they have better artifacts than you are available here. You know, the Arcane Tome and the Artifact of Protection, is it? The one that gives you that 5 ward save. I think they're better than you've got here. I mean, feel free to let me know differently if you think. I haven't got loads of experience with Vyrkos Dynasty, so I haven't got really any of those new models yet. So let me know what your thoughts are about that, because I'm happy to be wrong and happy to be told that actually this is pretty good, that's useful for this situation. Let me know that in the comments. But to be honest with you, I'm not overly impressed that much by the artifacts, but my favourite one is probably Cloak of the Night Prowler. I think that would be the most useful. And now moving on to what I have to say is the dynasty that I have had the most fun with personally so far, and that is going to be the Kastelai Dynasty. So this is the one that is quickly to summarise as like the Blood Knight one, or mainly sort of a vampire heavy one, and I covered it a bit in the lore and did a lore video, and essentially it's all mainly about martial prowess, things like that. These are the blood dragons of Age of Sigmar. So the first things you get are the battle traits, of course, and the first one is going to be the Shifting Keep. So instead of setting up a Kastelai Dynasty Blood Knights unit on the battlefield, you can place it to one side and say that it is set up in ambush as a reserve unit. You can set up one reserve unit in ambush for each unit you have already set up on the battlefield. At the end of any of your movement phases, you can set up one or more of these units on the battlefield wholly within 6 inches of the battlefield edge and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. At the start of the 4th battle round, reserve units that are still in ambush are destroyed. So like how it worked for the ambush in 4, the Legion of Night that we discussed in Manfred's Legion, but in this one, in Prince of Hordre's Legion, it's just for your Blood Knights. And I personally am not really a fan of it. I like it in the sense of it's just another tool you've got. It's another way to make your opponent double think decisions that they're going to be making, because you could come up from behind them or from the board edge, etc., and flank them. But with this, Blood Knights do not get any inherent bonuses to their charging, so you're going to need to roll that 9 to charge unless you can have other ways to try and enhance it, but you don't really get them off the bat at all, and it's quite hard to get those bonuses to any charge you could potentially do. With the Blood Knights, that meaning that they need to get the 9 charge, meaning it's not guaranteed, more likely won't get it off, and then it's a unit that is definitely better on the charged if unbuffed, rather than sort of you failing your charge and then getting charged in return, you lose quite a bit in your damage potential. So the Shifting Keep, I think, is cool. The narrative is absolutely fantastic. The Crimson Keep, where Prince of Hordre, basically, it's his home arrest, if you like, from Nagash. There's loads of cool lore for it you can go read. But on the table, I don't think it's particularly good, but it's an option. You're not paying for it, right? The reason why I like the Kastelai Dynasty is for the next battle trait they get, part of the Sanguinian Lance, and this is what I think makes them so diverse and really, really quite fun to play as they evolve throughout the game, because it is the might of the Crimson Keep, which means that each time a friendly Kastelai Dynasty vampire unit destroys an enemy unit, that friendly unit gains the relevant ability below for the rest of the battle. A unit cannot gain the same ability more than once per battle. If the enemy unit was a hero or monster, you get your Blooded Strength, and what that means is add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons used by that unit, excluding mounts. And then the next one is, if the enemy unit had a wound characteristic of 3 or more, and was not a hero or monster, you get the Stolen Vitality, which is add 1 to the wound characteristic of that unit. And then lastly, you get, if the enemy unit had a wound characteristic of 2 or less, you get the Absorbed Strength, which is add 2 to the run and charge rolls for that unit. So no matter what type of enemy unit you kill, you get some benefit. It's not like, I think, Thralls, the Idoneth Deepkin, they get a bonus if they're attacking something with 1 wound, or they have to have a wound characteristic of 4 or more for them to get another bonus, and then that's basically a gap of like 2 to 3 wound models that you don't really get any bonus for. This, you get a bonus no matter what you kill. And I know Thralls is not when they kill something, it's when they fight something, but you see what I'm trying to make that point. And the other thing I do want to point out here is, first time I read this, I was kind of like, okay, but I don't really own personally too many Blood Knights, really, to be honest, because before they were the resin ones, which are a pain in the ass to build and very expensive. But I may buy some Blood Knights in the future. And then I read through this again, and it's Kastelai Dynasty Vampires. So really, you just need to have the Kastelai Dynasty keyword and the Vampire keyword, which means when you bring in things like Manfred, Neferata, etc., they don't have the Kastelai Dynasty, so they won't benefit from this, but it means your Vampire Zombie Dragon's going to benefit from it, your Avengorian Lord is going to benefit from it, your normal Vampire Lord, but where I've really used it personally is on that Vampire Lord Zombie Dragon. Bloody hell, when you make it get like an extra damage on its lance, it really does make a huge thing. I know it excludes mounts, and mainly this is for if you're taking Blood Knights. Obviously, your horses would now all be damaged too, which is pretty observed. So you understand why they didn't include that. But where I've mainly used it is like Vampire and Zombie Dragon. I've used it on a Blood Knights, and it's really good. And even just Vargas suddenly made my Vargas 5 wounds each. It's made my Blood Knight 4 wounds each. When if you get the Stolen Vitality, that is, and that really does sort of like add up. Or let's say you get. I've had with my Vargas, I have lots of Vargas in my personal collection. I've had the Blooded Strength as an example, and now my Vargas are all 3 damage each, which makes me really, really like Vargas. And I know they're not the best thing in the game and everything else, but I think they're really, really cool. I love the narrative behind them, and I like it that they are better now in this new book, so I'm having a lot of fun with it. Being that it can be Kastelai Dynasty Vampires, like I say, not just Blood Knights. That's the first ability. Second ability, really does benefit loads of stuff in your army, and yeah, just generally really, really, really good bonuses you can get. And there is a command trait that really can sort of lean into this, which I'll get to in a moment, because that's definitely a good tactic to use. So going on with that, let's go on to the command trait, shall we? So the first one is Lords of the Crimson Keep. And the first one is going to be the Beacon of Bloodshed. So after this general makes a charge move, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of this general and roll a dice. On a 3+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now, it doesn't seem to matter what battle tome it is in the game, what army you play. There's always some sort of ability like this there. This is okay, but there are better things. That's all I'm going to say. So going on to number 2, we have Master of Retaliation. So at the end of the combat phase, if any wounds or mortal wounds were allocated to this general in that phase and this general was not slain, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of them and roll a dice. On a 2+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Now this is good if you need to quickly untie yourself from a enemy combat you're bogged down in, and you can basically do that with doing D3 mortal wounds. But again, there's better things here, so let's just keep going, shall we? So the next one is number 3, which is Power in the Blood. So if an enemy unit is destroyed within 6 inches of this general gains the relevant ability from the Might of the Crimson Keep battle trait above, even if the enemy unit was not destroyed by this general. Now, I really quite like this. There's a better one, which I'll get to, and I don't just want to keep going. I'm going to skip talking about my thoughts on this because there's a better command trait, because I do like to give options, and I think this is definitely one of the top options I like, because there is quite a few times when I've realised, and I've played with Kastelai, is that I've kind of lined it up. So I've got a general attacking a unit, let's say a enemy monster, let's say there was Leviathan the other day, charged it with the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, and then I had a Vampire Lord next to it as well, just a standard Vampire Lord, and I just planned for the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon to kill the Leviathan himself, and then he gets to add 1 damage with his lance, makes him even more effective, doesn't it, when he's fighting around the table. But unfortunately he just basically nearly killed the Leviathan but didn't do it completely, and then the normal Vampire Lord next to him did the job, finished it off, and now my little Vampire Lord on foot is now +1 damage. So that was a bit annoying, but if he was to do that with this ability, my Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, who I wanted to get the bonus, the Blooded Strength in this case, will still get that bonus. So I've seen a real life situation where that could have been very useful. So that's definitely one I like. But going on to the next one, and this is definitely my favourite, which is Rousing Commander. So once per battle at the start of the combat phase, you can see that this general will rouse their warriors. If you do so until the end of that phase, friendly Kastelai Dynasty vampire units wholly within 12 inches of this general benefit from the Blooded Strength and Stolen Vitality abilities from the Might of the Crimson Keep battle trait above if they have not already gained one or both. Now this is really good. Yes, it's once per battle, so you have to pick the right moment, but usually you can work out when you need to get that good charge off and really make the most of the damage, because I've used this most recently again in that game I just mentioned, and I had my Vampire Lord at one point with some Vargeist. It made a charge, I activated this. My Vargeist were now 5 wounds each for that phase, and it made them actually be able to make one of their models not die as a result of that. And my Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon was doing very well himself. Obviously had 15 wounds to that phase, but had that extra damage, which was very, very nice, especially on that charge he made, which really massively helped him out because he had the Death Lance, of course, and because on the charge he got to add 2 to the damage characteristic of that, so that turns it to a damage 4 weapon. Now it was actually damage 5, which was really, really quite huge, and I believe my opponent failed all their saves because it was, with the charge, was actually a -2 rend, failed his saves, and then it was just a flat 3/5 damage, thank you, so 15 damage, and my Vargeist were doing 3 damage each. So that was not even the best situation for it, because you could have maybe had a, Blood Knights in there to get the benefit as well. You could really, really sort of capitalize on that if you really plan it out really well, and you get to execute your plan as you plan to. So yes, that was just a small example, and it worked really, really nicely. And again, once per battle, so every time you read one of those abilities, like, here we go again, once per battle, on a 5-up, do a mortal wound. Something stupid, right? But this is very good and very much achievable, and that's why so far, when I play Kastelai, I've always gone for this one. And I do want to diversitise, but I do definitely think that this is the best one so far. But I'm happy to try other things out. But I do like this because, like I say, Might of the Crimson Keep is my favourite part of the whole point of playing Kastelai, because I love the whole thing about your troops, especially obviously your vampires, evolving throughout the game and really getting stronger depending on the things they've slain and the blood they've drunken. I think that's really, really cool and thematic, and I really, really do love it. It reminds me of the same sort of love I've got for the Eye of the Gods table for the Slaves of Darkness, right? Where your heroes can evolve throughout your game if they manage to slay enemy heroes and enemy monsters. I just really like that, and it's the same reason why I like this Might of the Crimson Keep, and that big Scar Dragon for the Stormcast has a similar ability as well. And the beautiful thing about Rousing Commander is that, yes, it's only once per battle, but the fact that by the amount of damage you're going to do from this is only going to enhance the chance of you activating properly the Might of the Crimson Keep. It's great, right? So let's say you benefit from that once per game, that one phase where you get Blooded Strength for free by using this. You may end up killing a enemy hero or monster, which then means you get Blooded Strength for the rest of the game. So it really goes hand in hand, And I will promise to move on to the next one now, but that is just why I really, really like it. But anyway, going on to number 5, we have Swift and Deadly. So, you can reroll charge rolls for friendly Kastelai Dynasty units while they are wholly within 12 inches of this general. So where I could see this coming in really useful is that if you want to go really sort of play on the shifting capability where you're bringing your Blood Knights on, this is helping you get those charges off because you're rerolling it. Still not guaranteed because you need a 9 at least, but it's going to help you with those charge rolls. And just generally, for the same reason when I talked about this ability, exactly the same we have in the driven by the Death Stench for the Vyrkos Dynasty, apart from instead of it being wholly within 9 inches in that dynasty, this one's wholly within 12. So there is a inherent benefit. It's much bigger, and it's just generally a really good ability getting reroll charges. Like just flat out, a lot of battle tomes have them, but unlike when I said like most battle tomes, when you charge and free up D3 mortal wounds, this is more effectively because you might not even charge with the other ability, but this one is really guaranteeing your charges. I just think it is, like a lot of the abilities here, shadowed by a Rousing Commander from my point of view, but Swift and Deadly is definitely a good one to take. And then number 6, we have Craven Massacre. So this general can run and still charge later in the same turn. So bear in mind, if this general was to benefit from the Absorb Speed from the Might of the Crimson Keep battle trait, what that means is that he can run and still charge, and he's add 2 to his run and charge rolls. Which again, it's not off the bat and you have to work for it, but I'm just saying how fast this guy could be running around. Stick Amplifying Pinions on him as well, or Amethystine Pinions, however it's spelled with that spell from the Vampire Spell Lore, and you've got yourself a very, very fast general, especially with a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, extremely fast. So yes, I do like that, but going over the command traits, my favourite, as you guys have probably already guessed, is Rousing Commander for all the reasons I've stated. Don't need to repeat them, although I would like to. But then after that, my favourite is probably going to be Swift and Deadly because reroll charge rolls is just really good. Then after that, Power in the Blood. And then we've got number 6, which is Craven Massacre, just to make your general really quite fast and get to where he needs to be. And then the other 2 are just a bit meh. So you've got like some really, really good ones, a really good one, an amazing one. And then, yeah. So yes, that's pretty much it for the command traits. And then going on to the artifacts, which are the relics of Red Conquest. So these are for Kastelai Dynasty heroes only. Now, the first one we've got is going to be the Sword of the Red Essentials. So, pick one of the bearer's many weapons in the combat phase. If any enemy models are slain by attacks made with that weapon, add 1 to the wound rolls for attacks made by friendly Soulblight Gravelords units wholly within 12 inches of the bearer until the end of that phase. Now, this very much reminds me of one that we read for the Legion of Night, which is not exactly the same, but remember, it's basically the same situation I said when I was talking about him, which was the Holy Impetus, I think it was pronounced, and it was different. It was a command trait and it allowed you to give things like an extra attack if your guy killed things. So similar sort of principles of how to activate it here. Which again is very, really good. Add 1 to wound rolls. I do like as well for every time I've mentioned add 1 to wound rolls, because you can add 1 to your hit rolls really easily now for attack. You can't do that with wound rolls. It's quite hard to benefit from that all the time. So I do like it for that reason, but your guy with this was going to say your general, but obviously any hero with this artifact does need to kill things first. So you've got to line it up well, but again, things like Skeleton Warriors, who you kind of don't mind getting hit first. You attack with your general, your Skeleton Warriors get hit, then they attack back, they regenerate, and now they've got that +1 to wound. So just things like that you could use. I do like it, but it has got its flaw at the end of the day. But if you do manage to put it off with not too much basically retaliation from your opponent before you get to make the most out of it, it is very good. And then going on to number 2, we have got a Blood Saint's Shield. So subtract 1 from casting rolls for enemy wizards within 6 inches of the bearer. Yeah, don't like that really. Unless you're going against, those combat wizards that are going to be in your face anyway, you're not going to be making the most of that. Number 3, we've got the Standard of the Crimson Keep. So subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with missile weapons that target the bearer. I mean, that's good, but again, missile weapons, you don't know if you're going to be going against missile weapons at the end of the day, so you can't rely on it at all, really. But then again, if you're going against Coden Overlords or something else with heavy missile weapons, it's going to be good. It's one of those things. If you did that, and obviously you could do all-out defense, you can make your guy really quite hard to be killed, but I think there are better uses for artifacts. So going on to number 4, we have the Gravesand Shard, which is my favourite one, because it's once per battle. At the start of the hero phase, you can say that this bear will crush their Gravesand Shard. If you do so, add 1 to the save rolls for Deathless Minions battle traits which we read in the Allegiance ability video. For friendly Soulblight Gravelord units wholly within 12 inches of the bearer until the end of that turn. So the Deathless Minions is a 6-up death save, basically. And why I really like this is, yes, it's once per battle, but this can be really, really useful for when you know you're going to take a hit, or sort of like defending against like an Alpha Strike. So yeah, when you're about to take a hit, basically, because what you do is, let's say you've got a lot of Blood Knights in your army, as an example, or anything with a death banner. You do this. So now your 6-up death save is now a 5-up death save, and those banners for your death units are allowing you to reroll 1s in your death save. So let's say Blood Knights, they inherently have a 3-up save, and now let's say you want to give them all-out defense as well, because you know you really, really like your Blood Knights, and you spend a long time, you know, building and painting them and looking really, really shiny. You want them to stay on the battlefield, right? Because there's nothing worse than spending so much time on a model and then it just dies continuously all the time, just to remind you of your failures in the game and in real life. But with the Blood Knights, they start with a 3-up save. You do out defense on them. Now it's a 2-up save. And then if the enemy gets through the 2-up save, they then have to deal with a 5-up death save, re-rolling once. Suddenly your Blood Knights become very survivable, and that is why I like it, because Kastelai can be a very Blood Knight heavy army. It's like a kind of an alternative to this, where I like to run lots of Vyrkos, because like I say, I've got a lot of them in my collection, I do like them. They are not so survivable. They have a 5-up inherent save, which can do all-out defense, a 4-up save, and then with this, they're not re-rolling 1s because they don't have a death banner. But it means that they go from a 5-up save, all-out defense, 4-up save, and then they've got a 5-up death save. So it makes them a unit that you think dies pretty easily, a little bit more survivable. So has got two working things on that. And then going on to number 5, we've got Fragments of the Keep. So this is subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made with many weapons by enemy units within 6 inches of the bearer. Yep, that's pretty good. Because like I say, the enemy can plus loads to their... Alright, well, not loads, but they can do that +1 to hit, can't they, with attack. But not too many ways with the wounding. So going on to number 6, we've got the Red Casket. So once per battle, at the start of your charge phase, you can say that the bearer will draw upon the power of the Red Casket. If you do so, add 3 to the charge rolls for that bearer in that phase. So you can already see, if you want to go like a really fast general, you're given the Craven Massacre, he's running a charge, and now he's adding 3 to his charge rolls. So if you wanted to go that route, you can do. But for me, I want to, with Kastelai, really, really buff everything else in my army, because if everything else in my army is buffed, if it's a vampire and it kills things, it's going to activate a lot of the Might of the Crimson Keep ability. So I'd rather that than try and make a powerhouse with my general. But then again, in my general's powerhouse, he's activating a lot of the Might Crimson Keep. So it depends on what sort of direction you want to go. So for me, it's funny really, because the two things I like here from what you get to choose, being the command trait and the artifact, are both once per battle things, which is quite unusual, because usually they suck, or, you know, mainly because it's once per battle, and they're quite underwhelming considering that. But Rousing Commander, for all the reasons I've mentioned, I really like it. But going on to the artifacts, it has to be the Gravesand Shard, because Rousing Commander allows you to be really offensive, and then the Gravesand Shard allows you to be that defensive, so you're not as much of a glass cannon as you may once fear. So I really like Gravesand Shard. And then going on to, I always like to say, give some more options there as well. I do like the Sword of the Red Essentials. Again, it's risky, you might not guarantee it, but it is good if you do get it off, essentially. And then after that, it's probably going to be Fragment of the Keep to make the enemy -1 to their wound rolls. And then after that, it's going to be the Red Casket to add 3 to their charge rolls for the bearer in that phase. So yes, those are my favourite ones, and I really like the Kastelai for... I probably talked about Kastelai more than most of the other sub-legions here, just because I really like that development your units can go through in the game. I think it really tells their story, what they're doing on the table, into turning into their rules at the end of the day. So yeah, absolutely love the Kastelai one. So moving on to the last one with that, and that is going to be the Avengorii Dynasty. So this is one that is, I think, a bit interesting, because obviously here, where we are currently in Age of Sigmar, going new into 3rd edition, but 3rd edition's been around for a few months now, hasn't it? So the whole point in 3rd edition, though, like the Year of the Beast, is that monsters are particularly good, aren't they? So Avengorii is the monster one, and not really many people that I've spoken to rave about it or say many good things about it. So let's see what my thoughts are on the Avengorii Dynasty, and I have actually got some playtime with them under my belt, so I can talk about that. But going on with the battle traits, we've got the Nightmare Brood. So the first one is going to be Cursed Mutation. So if a Soulblight Gravelords army with an Avengorii Dynasty includes any Terrorgeist or Zombie Dragons, one of those models has a Cursed Mutation. Choose which model will have the curse mutation, then pick from or roll on the curse mutation table opposite. So just pick which one you want. But going on, it says you can choose one additional friendly Avengorii Dynasty Terrorgeist or Avengori Dynasty Zombie Dragon to have a curse mutation. For each War Scroll battalion in your army, a model cannot have more than one curse mutation, and an army may not include duplicates of the same curse mutation. So just kind of ignore the last bit there, because obviously you can play the game how you want to, especially go narrative, etc. You can follow the rules for that, but obviously there's more about core battalions now, obviously in match play. So there are other ways to get enhancements, which, read the core rules to learn all about that. The only thing I will say about the curse mutations here is that, as nice as it is to have curse mutations, we'll get to them in a moment, and they're not on the screen yet, it's a little bit sad how they're just locked into the Avengorii Dynasty rather than a lot of other battle tomes and Mount Traits where they are just flat out, no matter what sub-legions you go, you've got access to them, and it just feels a little bit lazy how they're locked into the Avengorii Dynasty, which is just my honest opinion. But going on to the monstrous might, which you can see, is that you can subtract 1 from wound rolls for attacks made with melee weapons that target friendly Avengorii Dynasties, Avengorii Dynasty Zombie Dragons and Terrorgeist, and Avengorii Dynasty Vampire Monsters, unless the attacking unit is a monster. So that is pretty good. Again, going against a lot of monsters in 3rd edition, but not all the time. There's still definitely plenty of Death Star things out there that are not monsters. So the nice thing about this is that the enemy is going to be that -1 to wound, and I've probably mentioned it multiple times in this video already, how useful it is to make the enemy -1 to wound, because there's not much they can do about that. Usually, when it says vampire monsters, that's basically sort of covers your Avengorian lords. And then going on to the Unstoppable Nightmares, it's in the combat phase, you can pick one friendly Avengorii Dynasty Terrorgeist, or Avengorii Dynasty Zombie Dragon, or Avengorii Dynasty Vampire Monster to unleash its monstrous power. If you do so until the end of that phase, use the top row on the model's damage characteristic regardless of how many wounds it has suffered. The same model cannot benefit from the same ability more than once per battle. So I do like this. I think probably what benefits from this the most is maybe the Zombie Dragon, because its claws can really go down. The Terrorgeist, the mortal wounds it's doing on the Moors, doesn't really get affected at all by this. But the Avengorii obviously gets a bit affected as well, but it is very annoying when you have like a Zombie Dragon in combat. I've played multiple times with Zombie Dragons, obviously, and it's taken a bit of a beating. You go, right, go and attack you with my Moor, and then you fluff your Moor attacks, and it's like, bugger. What about the Soulblight Talons? Actually, now I'm only making 2 attacks with that instead of 7. So you realise, I'm not going to do anything this turn with this dragon. Now you can, so it is nice. Then going on to the command traits, so you've got Twisted Paragons, which you only get 3, but the first one you get is an eye for an eye. So if any wounds or mortal wounds are allocated to this general in the combat phase, add 1 to the damage characteristic of melee weapons used by this general, including their mount, until the end of that phase. So I quite like this as well, because you've got a Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon as an example. If you take any wounds or mortal wounds, doesn't mean it's a lot. You could just be, 1 damage here, like best case scenario, obviously. So let's say your damage table is not affected, but even if it was, you can do Unstoppable Nightmares to negate the damage table being affected. And now your Zombie Dragon Claws are 3 damage each. Your Moor is D6 plus 1. The Lance is going to be, if you got the charge off, which is a little bit tricky because that means that you would have charged the enemy and you didn't attack first. But anyway, you got the charge off, damage 4 with this damage 5. So I like that. Going on to the next one, which is Torment-Driven Throws. So at the start of the combat phase, you can roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of this general. On a 5+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound and can only attack this general in that phase after this general has already fought in that phase. I do like it, but not guaranteed. Again, if it was like the Heathen Knights of Slaanesh when they first came out in their first release, and those Keepers of Secrets basically made you not be able to fight first until you could make the enemy not roll a 2-up on that ability. This is on a 5-up. So again, I'm not complaining that it's not really easy to do, because then I'd complain that it's too easy to do. But on a 5-up, you can't guarantee it. So if you're in combat with just one thing, chances are you're not going to get off. You're in combat with a couple things, chances are you might get one of them to not do anything. So yeah, that's cool if you get it off, but you can't rely on it, essentially. Number 3, we've got Unhinged Rampages, so you can reroll charge rolls for this general, which is okay, but just feels like meek and mild compared to the other reroll charge rolls we had access from the other dynasties. So my favourite one here is an eye for an eye. Again, not guaranteed, but you can make your damage dealing hero pretty good. But I mean, as soon as you tell your opponent what the command trait is, and if they want to read into it, or you tell them what it does, because again, you shouldn't really hide anything from your opponent. It's a little bit like your opponent go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do my best to make sure I don't forget and I won't attack you first, and you've kind of lost it. But the eye for an eye is the best one out of these three. And then going on to the Artifacts Power, which is for the monstrous spoils. So we've got Breath of the Voidmaw. So once per battle in your hero phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer that is visible to them, and roll a dice. On a 3+, that unit suffers D6 mortal wounds. Again, not guaranteed, but you've got more chance of getting it off than not getting it off. And I do like that because D6 mortal wounds can go a long way into achieving what you want in the game. And then number 2, we have Goraz's Collar, however that's pronounced. Once per battle, at the start of the combat phase, you can say that the bearer will don Goraz's Collar. If you do so, you can reroll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by the bearer in that phase. I mean, that's quite... I mean, I was going to say it's quite good, but it's once per battle. Why can't it just be always reroll 1s to wound, right? Because how is that game breaking? So anyway, yeah, that annoys me. And then going on to number 3, we have the Furious Crown. So once per battle at the start of your charge phase, you can say that the bearer will unleash the fury of the crown. If you do so, after the bearer makes a charge move in that phase, you can pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of the bearer and roll a number of dice equal to the charge roll. For that charge roll, for each 5+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Why are all these things once per battle? Okay, I'm a bit like I said, Avengorii Dynasty. A lot of people weren't really sort of like singing and dancing about it. I have tried it out, and I haven't tried it out for a little while now. It's kind of annoying me now when I'm rereading the abilities. Why they're not a bit better, but I'll get into that later. But yes, it's a shame that they're all once per battle, and they're not even that really strong, powerful. I would say Breath of the Voidmaw, that was just every turn, bit strong. But the other two, ridiculous. But the Breath of the Voidmaw is what I'd say is the better one out of those. Then going on to the Curse Mutations. So the first one is Madden Hunger. So once per turn at the start of the combat phase, you can pick one enemy model with a wound characteristic of 1. That is within 3 inches of this model. If you do so, that enemy model is slain, and you can heal 1 wound allocated to this model. So yes, I do like this one. You can just take away unit champions and stuff to stop them being able to do command abilities for a unit, so that can really bugger them up when they've kind of relied on their unit champions staying alive until the end for them to do Inspiring Presence. Now you bugger them. So yes, I do like that one a lot. Or like all-out defense or whatever. That is very good. At the start of the combat phase as well, so you can do it before your enemy activates command abilities half the time when it's your turn. And then going on to number 2, we have Urges of Atrocracy, is it? So once per battle, this model can run and still charge later in the same turn. Again, why once per battle? But it's okay. And then going on to number 3, we have Null Blood Construct. So reroll successful casting rolls for enemy wizards within 9 inches of this model, which again, it's kind of the same when it'll subtract 1 from the Kastelai artifact that allows you to subtract 1 from enemy wizard casting if they're within 6 inches. You have to be up close, so I'm not really a massive fan of that. So I'd say the Madden Hunger is definitely the best curse mutation. So going over the 3 available customizations you have with Avengorii, which is the Twisted Paragons and the Monstrous Spoils and the curse mutations, I would say that for the command trait, go with an eye for an eye. Not guaranteed, but if you can do it, buffs your guy pretty well with the +1 damage. For the artifacts, I would say the Breath of the Voidmaw. This is once per battle again, but on a 3+, not guaranteed, but D6 mortal wounds. If you do get it, very nice, and you should get it on a 3+. And then Curse Mutations, something that's once per turn, which is nice, not once per battle. Being able to take away enemy champions from units so they can't do command abilities is very nice as well. But what I will say is, though, so my overall thoughts on the Avengorii Dynasty, and you know, the nice thing about the Avengorii Dynasty is you can take Zombie Dragons and Terrorgeist as battle line. So that is good as well. You can do that, hence why this is the monster heavy one. You hadn't already guessed that. But it just feels lackluster, if I'm completely honest with you. I think you would still have a great time with an army full of Terrorgeist monsters and Soulblight Gravelords and not just Flesh Eater Courts. And Avengorii is something that you could easily import over if you're a Flesh Eater Court player. as you're going to have a lot of probably zombie dragons and terrorgeists you can just easily import over. So yeah, it's nice and simple for that one. But apart from that, it just feels lackluster because it feels like they haven't really put much effort into it, because there's 3 command traits that aren't particularly good. There's 3 artifacts that aren't particularly good, which makes you just want to take sort of like core rules of artifacts and command traits. And then there's 3 curse mutations that I mean, the Madden Hunger, it's got its purpose, but the other 2, they're just, yeah, just lackluster and just a bit plain and boring. Especially, like, we were just reading Kastelai, weren't we? And it's like, if you kill an enemy hero, could just be a 5-wound hero, you add 1 damage for the rest of the game. And then here, everything's like, once per battle this and once per battle that. So, it's a bit of a sour note to leave on, which is a little bit annoying. But I feel like you can still have fun with Avengorii Dynasty. Like, I'll be honest, so I've played with, again, not the most competitive list, but just some fun, Nagash, and just, you know, terrorgeists, because why not? Again, my opponent won the game, because it's not really much I could do with it, and the battle plan that we happened to roll to play was called Strength in Numbers, and I didn't know what that was yet, as I was very new to 3rd edition. But I guess Strength in Numbers doesn't really benefit armies with just monsters. So, but it was still bloody good fun. Terrorgeists did a load of stuff, and even just making the enemy subtract 1 from wound rolls and stuff did actually massively quite help with that, and being able to make things fight on full strength was good, and I had a lot of fun. But yeah, Avengorii is not really the best one, but I wanted to explain why, read through the rules, and that's why I do this in depth for you guys, rather than just straight away not do any of that and just brush it off and say, yeah, don't really look at it. You can still have a lot of fun with it. Just realize it's not going to be the strongest, and if you've got a different opinion and you've played with these guys and you actually know I think it's one of the best ones in this book, honestly, don't feel like I completely disagree with you. I want you to tell me why you think that, and put it in the comments down below and why I'm wrong, because I would definitely be interested in hearing your thoughts with that one. But yeah, guys, with that brings us to the end. And the last thing I want to do, just in case I didn't mention it, because I don't think I did, because I mentioned it for the Avengorii, talking about battle line you can unlock when you go certain legions and dynasties. I'll just go over it again. So, for example, if you go Legion of Blood, you get Black Knights. Boo, I know, sad times. We'll get to that in that video. But they become battle line for your Legion of Blood, your Black Knights. If you go the Kastelai Dynasty, Blood Knights come battle line. Very much more interesting. If you go for Legion of Knights, you get Vargeist as battle line, which I think is a little bit weird because it's a vampire unit that I really want to be battle line for Kastelai. As like I said, I really like running Vargeist and Kastelai. But then obviously if you go your Avengorii Dynasty, you're going to unlock your Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragon. So just in case I didn't mention that, I can't remember if I did or not. But I just thought I'd let you know there. But anyway, guys, yeah. So like I say, that is the end of this video. Please let me know down below your thoughts on the Soulblight Gravelords dynasties, legions, dynasties, sub-legiances, sub-factions, whatever Games Workshop wants to call them these days. Let me know that down below. Alternatively, if you are new to this and you are watching this video and you're learning, you're building up your Soulblight Gravelords army, let me know if you've got any questions as well and put them down in the comments down below. As this is an army that I do know quite a bit of, and I am got a fair bit of experience with it already, but I'm gaining more experience as time goes on, and I'm very happy to try and help, as I am with all the armies I cover. But obviously not lying to you guys. For example, I personally don't play Lumineth Realm Lords, so I'm not going to know them nearly as much as I know Soulblight Gravelords. So if you do have a question or thought process or sort of tactics, put them in the comments down below, as I'll be happy to discuss with you and try and help you out with that. And as well, guys, as always, if you do enjoy this video, please do me a massive favour and smash the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification. That would be amazing. The reason why I do ask, it's not just for the sake of it. If you like this video, it shows to me that you guys are enjoying these long in-depth series, and especially when it's Soulblight Gravelords or all things death-related. Smash the like button for that. Also shows to YouTube that people are enjoying this video, and hopefully that'll mean to YouTube that they will recommend this video to people who don't know about the channel, so that helps get the channel grow at the end of the day, and shows people my content who may enjoy it. So that'd be amazing if you could like the video. If you smash the subscribe button at the end of the day, that's how the channel grows. And if you smash the bell notification, it means that if you are following my Soulblight Gravelords or like in-depth series at the moment, or any other series I'm covering or videos that you enjoy, it means you will never miss out on them. So smash the bell button for that. And also, it really does help out the channel with algorithm if you smash these 3 buttons. So that'd be amazing. Smash the like, subscribe, bell notification. You feel like you know someone who would enjoy this video, make sure you share it with them. And if you'd like to talk more in depth about the Soulblight Gravelords, make sure you head on over and join the Discord, which there is a link to my Discord in the description of this video below. We have lots of Soulblight Gravelord players there. Those people talking things about Soulblight Gravelords, but also all things to do with Warhammer, to do with hobby, painting, building, all that sort of thing, conversions, list tech, list building, so what armies to collect, and news. There's so much going on, and loads of lore as well, of course. So if you want to join that community, we've got about 350 members now. Click the join button and you won't regret it, I can guarantee you that. And then also what I'd like to ask as well, if you would like to support the channel that step further, I have got a Patreon and a YouTube membership. And what does that mean? So if you click the join button next to the subscribe button, allow you to become a member here in Age of Nagash, where you can give anything from just £1 a month to the channel. It's basically a donation you can do to keep the channel going, anything from £1 up, or there's a link to my Patreon at the top of the description down below. You click the link, it takes you to my Patreon, give anything from just $1 up a month. And really, when I say this is basically a donation, keeps the channel going. If this, like my YouTube channel, was a business, it'd be losing money every month for how much time, effort and money I actually put in my own into the channel. But when people support me on a personal level like this, it shows to me that I can justify everything I put into the channel. And at the end of the day, it makes me smile, because it means that people are actually personally supporting me to do something that I try and do to help the community at the end of the day, and help get people into Age of Sigmar and to continue their Age of Sigmar journey. So if you've got a spare dollar or a pound lying around, it really does make a huge difference. I would massively appreciate that. And the people who have decided to make that decision are going to be these amazing people here that you can see on screen. And my biggest supporter and all of that, I've mentioned the name of this enough times during this video, but it's going to be my Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, which is going to be Filq. Filq knows he gives so much support to the channel, which I'm generally overwhelmed when I give you a shout out on every one of my videos, because it's really kind and really generous of you, mate. And please keep up. It really does do wonders and really does help keep the channel going. If it wasn't for you and other people on this list, I wouldn't be making these videos at the end of the day, and you guys wouldn't be hearing me speak now. And then going on to my next biggest supporters are going to be my Morgasts, which of course are going to be the amazing Bleed Red, the incredible the Mortarch of the Necropolis, and the fantastic Edward P. Guys, thank you so much for your huge amount of support you give to the channel every month. Never goes unnoticed, and it really does make a huge difference. Thank you really for being so generous. And then going on to my vampires, who always say the core that keeps Age of Nagash going, as there's so many of them and they're really awesome people. It's going to be Ben C, Rouse321, David A, Dragoonity, Ronni H, Darren L, SpareBear, Krista H, Northdrop, Nathan F, Andrew G, Tom W, Wiggy Whooty and Nathan S. Thank you all so much for your very kind and generous support you give to the channel. And then to my Necromancers, which are Jacq.l, RadiationRiley, AW77, Sagas, WolfNick, Michal W, Cranky Wombat, Tom M, Christopher C, Krista F, James S, Thomas B, Steve T, James T, Patrick F, JJ, R Christopher, Sception, Arnold G and Shaun S. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be able to keep up doing this YouTube channel. It really goes a long way, and like I say, always overwhelmed with the amount of support you guys give the channel. Thank you. If you do enjoy this video, make sure to say a thank you to these guys, as they do make it all possible. And thank you to everyone allowing me to help people as much as I can with Age of Sigmar. And yeah, guys, so with that, if you could support that way, that would be amazing. Click the join button. I'll link to Patreon down below. But if you can't, no worries at all. But if you do enjoy the video, all I do ask you to do is smash the like, subscribe, and bell notification for reasons I already mentioned. And that's free. So please do that if you could. It would be incredible. And also, if you would like to support a step further but you haven't got the cash, just honestly, if you share my content with someone who doesn't know my channel, that equally goes a huge way into helping out build and strengthen and grow my channel as much as possible. So that would be amazing. And above everything else, guys, I'm just really glad you came and checked out this video, and I hope I've helped you a little bit more deciding about your Soulblight Gravelords and how you want to build on them and really make a huge collection of the probably one of the best, well no, get rid of the probably. One of the best armies in Age of Sigmar. I don't just mean by the rules, I mean one of my favourite personal armies, if not my favourite, which is really, really hard to tell because I love a lot of, well, all of the Death ones, but it could potentially be my favourite army. But with that aside, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it managed to help you. If you've got any more questions, put them in the comments down below. Have a great rest of your day. Remember to stay healthy, stay safe, wear a mask, make sure you wash your hands, otherwise you're going to roll really poorly. Doesn't matter what sub-legions you pick, you're going to roll really poorly if you don't wash your hands. But more importantly, until next time, remember that Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.